If you want to run a company where core values actually mean something, and you've already done the obvious things to make that happen, like putting up posters everywhere and doing core values training, but nobody actually knows those values, let alone can tell you how to live them in a day-to-day way within the company, then this video is for you. So after months of so-called training, my frontline staff couldn't reliably name our 4 core values, and they definitely couldn't use them to consistently make values-based decisions within the company, which is the whole point of having core values, to affect behavior change consistently across the company. So I stepped in, and within a couple of weeks, with about 30 minutes a day, everyone not only could explain them, but they could demonstrate how they could apply them, or actually had applied them within the previous 48 hours. So in this video, I'm going to show you why our original training failed, and it wasn't for lack of trying, why it wasn't because employees were lazy or stupid, and what shift happened that allowed people to start remembering and then be able to explain and then use what we told them mattered. My name is Luke Murray. I'm a former physician. I've been an entrepreneur for about 20 years. I've done around $100 million in revenue during that time. I currently own a portfolio of companies that does about $3 million a year. And I make these videos because I would like ambition without the bullshit, and I'm guessing you would too. So a few weeks ago, I asked the CEO of one of my companies what I could do to be of service. And he said, maybe I could do some sales training. And since I love to teach, I jumped at the opportunity. But as I sat down and started talking through things, I realized that our company, or at least the people that were representing our company, didn't know the core values, which were fundamental, not just to what we said in our sales talk, but why we said it, and honestly, why and how we do anything in our company. For example, curiosity is our second core value. Candor is our third. Both of those help you sell. So I thought, why am I teaching this sales script if they don't know the principles behind why we say what we say? And the discouraging part, as I mentioned before, was that we'd already put real effort into this, like hundreds of hours. Every new employee gets the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, which is a book that our values come from. They also didn't just get a copy. They have book club. They record thoughts on each chapter and send them in a group text. We have posters everywhere with these, it's just 4 words on them. So it wasn't neglect. When I asked them to name the 4 core values, like of the 8 or 10 people, maybe 2 of them knew all 4. Some could talk around the idea, but not clearly enough to make a decision without it. One of our core values is taking 100% responsibility. For example, that might sound straightforward, but any virtue could be turned into a weapon if not wielded correctly. So if someone thinks taking 100% responsibility means being accountable, they could just address lunch being 15 minutes late by saying, guys, I want to take 100% responsibility. I'm sorry, this is all my fault. And in some business cultures, that may be the desired response, but it absolutely is not in our company because everyone's done learning. Frank blamed Frank, and now we can all go back to work, and we don't have any insight into how to do that better. So not only could a misunderstanding make someone wrong, as it would in this case, they can be wrong and confident that they're doing it right, which is even worse. So an example of how we would practice 100% responsibility in this particular case, well, I could have blamed myself. I could have blamed the staff for not remembering things. But instead I said, how did I co-create a situation where people spent months around this material and still don't know it? And I realized the answer was pretty simple, but it was going to be uncomfortable. We had confused exposure with learning. They'd heard the words, they'd listened to the chapters, they talked about the ideas, but hearing something and being able to retrieve it from memory are not the same things. And I knew this. I mean, I went to school and grad school and medical school for like 25 years. Passive listening is often a terrible trade if the goal is remembering, which is why most medical students skip class. The useful work happens not when you're sitting there getting preached at. It happens when you have to pull the information out of your brain from scratch, because that's the condition where you actually have to use it. Like you're standing in front of a client who seems to be unreasonable and you don't know what to do. Well, that's the actual environment in which you have to be curious. You don't get a multiple choice test in that moment. And in our company, curiosity is not just remember to be curious. It's not just ask questions, for example. It's how you ask questions. So the process of doing this, pulling things out of your brain from scratch, is called active recall. And it means you don't just recognize the answer when you see it, you produce it, as I mentioned before. You have to explain it. And unfortunately, or fortunately, your first answer is probably going to suck, and producing it will be cognitively strenuous and uncomfortable. And that's exactly what you want. Actually, my employees literally were talking about, I am sweating during class. That's what learning feels like. It's also what getting stronger feels like. I mean, if you can do 10 push-ups and you do those 10 push-ups, you didn't get any stronger. It's going to your maximum amount of push-ups and then trying to do 1 or 2 more that you actually become more capable of doing more push-ups. It's the edge of failure that you get stronger than you used to be. And it's right at the edge of your already existing knowledge base that you get smarter than you used to be. If nobody's brain hurts, you may have had a meeting, but you probably didn't train anyone. So I changed the training. Every day I would walk in and I'd say, all right, everyone's got 90 seconds, write down our 4 core values and then everything you know about them. And they would get some version of it wrong. Almost everybody. Now, some folks would get it right, and I would pair them up with the folks that didn't. And they would have to define the values to each other, explain what the value was and was not, give examples from the actual job. And what I made sure to do was not jump in and start teaching again. I shut the up. Because if everybody listened to me explain something that one person didn't understand, then we're back in the same boat, which is passive listening, which, as I mentioned, sucks. But if they're explaining it to each other from scratch, now they're doing the work, which means they're doing the learning, pulling it out of their brain, putting words into it, noticing where they are unclear, and then correcting it. Once they had those 4 core values as like a skeleton, then I could slowly add more nuance. Like, for example, we have a 7-step process about how to speak with candor. Eventually, once I had those steps, I had them practice with each other. And there are levels to every game. It's like learning how to shoot, like in the Army. You start with a close-up target on a firing range with no distractions. And eventually you add distraction and difficulty and stress until you're trying to hit an enemy at 500 yards in the middle of a firefight. So your job as a leader, as a teacher, is to find the highest level your team member is comfortable at and then push them to go one level higher through active recall, not through explaining some shit that they don't know yet. So what happened? Within literally 2 weeks, every person in the company could write down all 4 core values, and they could write down how we apply each of them. And by the end of that, I just had them go in. I sat down in class and I said, you've got 90 seconds. And then I actually just said, does anyone not know what they are? Is anyone confused or think they're not going to get 100%? And folks were like, no, we all know this. So I stopped teaching them and I said, you guys need to pair up and practice. Get into the game with each other. And that's when values start moving from training material into culture, because culture is not what people can recognize when you remind them on a multiple choice test or point to the poster on the wall. Culture is what people can remember and how they act when you are not in the room. So if you want your team to learn something, don't explain it and then ask, does everyone understand? Ever heard that before? If you do, you're an idiot and you're wasting everyone's time. People just say yes because they don't want to look stupid or they just want the meeting to be over. Instead, ask them to retrieve it. Do it a lot. I mean, I would do that you have 90 seconds drill. I would do that 2 or 3 times per day. Ask them to write the core idea. Don't let them look. Ask them to explain it to someone and then come back tomorrow and do it over and over and over again. And if they can't do those things, then they didn't learn it. So that's how I found out that my company's core values were bullshit and what I did to fix it so that I now have a company that is a values-based organization, which means you can see them being lived out in the decisions and behaviors of my employees. So I hope you enjoyed this story. And remember, you pick the made-up stories that you want to believe, so pick some good ones.